Yeah, I'm excited to talk to all of you guys. I went on a fly fishing trip a couple of weeks ago, and that's usually a time that I like to be serene and quiet and not have people mess with me. I always do it after tax season. And I came off the water and I had over 100 missed phone calls. I had like 80 texts and like 100 emails. You see, the House had passed a bill, and all of a sudden the RSA wanted to talk to me, SEA wanted to talk to me, Energy Sage wanted to talk to me. Everybody wanted to talk to me. So, um, I made a decision. I called my partner, and together, my partner and we did something that I don't know if anybody else in America has done. We read the bill. I read the entire bill. And the first thing I'll tell you is um, I can see why it has critics, but I can also see why it has massive, massive support. I see why Elon criticized it. I see why the solar industry criticizes it. I see why most small business owners and most big business owners are absolutely 100% largely in favor of it. I see why Democrats oppose it, and I see why Republicans like it. But people ask me, how do I feel about it? And I've been asked that a lot. And I feel the same way about it as I feel about most things in life. I don't feel anything about it other than I need to understand it and use it to my advantage. That's it. How do I feel about it? Well, I feel that there are some gold mines to make a bunch of money in it as long as I understand it. And that's going to give me an opportunity to beat my competitors. So, how should you guys feel about it? Well, that's a simple one.
The same way.
Absolutely the same way. Let me tell you something. They are not selling solar panels and installing solar panels in sub-Saharan Africa and rural India and rural Vietnam because of a tax credit or because of some sort of financing scheme or because of some kind of negative amortization loan. It's because it's really good technology that actually works. And so in solar, you don't need a tax credit. What you have to do is you have to be able to beat the utility and you have to be able to beat your competitor. And that's it. And with our strategies, we're going to allow you to kick the crap. I've been working on my language. We have to kick the crap out of both. And we've got strategies that are going to allow you to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I think everybody here knows the basis of our strategy. Do I need to review it just a little bit? I'm going to go through just a deal the way here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a deal and I'm going to show you the strategy that we use right now. And then I'm going to show you how to use that strategy. And we're going to assume that the bill doesn't change one bit. It passes as is. And then if it doesn't, it's just bonus. So let's go ahead and I will share my screen here. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we can.
All right, so this is the calculator. Hopefully most of you guys are using it right now. And the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to build a deal and it's going to be this is going to be just a loan. So tell me if you like these numbers. We've got a $40,000 install. Now, usually what I like to do is I like to come down here, pick a state. Let's just say we'll just say pick a state for me. Did I hear
Do
that?
do New York.
Kentucky,
Do New York
Virginia,
because they have
Kentucky.
Virginia.
California.
New
Good
York
Lord.
has a state incentive. Choose New York. I want to see how this works with the state
No,
incentive.
I'm not going to do New York because it does have
Just
a
do
state
do
incentive, but
Kentucky.
it's more complicated and I want to keep it simple. Um, I'll do Kentucky. I'll keep it a lot more simple and then I'll add in what we would do in New York.
North Carolina.
Understood. Thank you, Jeremy.
All right, no problem. So North Carolina and Kentucky are going to work. Here's what I'll do is I'll just keep it simple. This is a married couple. Um, Dad makes $70,000 a year. Mom makes $60,000 a year, so they make $130,000 a year. And that means they're married, they're filing jointly. They make $130,000 a year, so that means they are in the 22% tax bracket. Most states are somewhere around 5%. Arizona's about 5%. Utah's about 5%. Arizona might be a little more. Kentucky's around 5%. A lot of those states are around 5%, so we're just going to go with 5%. So I got it. Sorry, I don't use Zoom a lot, and I've got this little bar in front of my back button here. So with dad making $70,000 a year and mom making $160,000 a year, we got $130,000 a year. So that means they were in a 22% federal bracket and a 5% state bracket. So that means they're in a 27% tax bracket. And one of the problems that people have in solar is they just estimate. They don't worry about how much money people make. And what that does is that creates an unfortunate situation where you tell people who don't make a lot of money that they're going to get incentives that they're not going to get or they're not going to get for a very long time. And then just as egregious is your way under promising on what people who make a lot of money are going to get back, and you're not going to be able to sell those people. And so this is the calculator that I use. I have a team of 4 or 5 guys that sell solar. I don't really do it as a way for my company to generate income, though it does certainly generate income. I do this as a way to understand solar sales better. So when I speak to you guys, I can speak the language and I can understand how to help you better. And just so you understand, right now, the guys in our company, their sit to install ratio is the only ratio we count. We don't count sales. We only count installs. And our sit to install ratio is about 75%. So about 75% of the people that sit go all the way to install. And people
That's
say, BS,
incredible, Jeremy. That's an incredible number.
yeah, people.
Guys, our sit to install ratio, I bet you, I'm just guessing, is 20%.
That's a typical industry average that we see is about 25 to 30% will sell, but then about 40% of those people will try to cancel, and it's usually in the low 20s. And so, yeah, and some of our guys will have nearly 80%. People will say, bullshit, you'll have more credit fails than that. And it's true, we will have credit fails. But if we have a credit fail, we've got a partner that will do a HELOC and pull the equity out of their house. And if that fails, we have the people pull it out of the retirement fund because that's how important it is that people install solar once we talk to them.
So, guys, Jeremy's about ready to tell you how they have a 75% sit to install, not sit to close, sit to install. And they're saying things differently than we are. And he's going to tell you right now what they're saying.
Yes. And if you include 3 days, I can tell you the total number of cancels that we've had. 1. And it was in 2018. We have not had a cancel since 2018, including 3 days. And I'll tell you why. We don't sell solar as a way to save money on your electric bill. We sell it as a tax shelter. So let's talk a little bit about how that works. So the first thing that we did is we realized that this person was in Kentucky or Minnesota or Georgia or Utah or Arizona or anywhere there was about a 5% tax bracket. So they've got a 22% federal bracket and a 5% state bracket. That puts us at a 27% bracket. We will assume that their bill with the utility right now is about $200. We also assume that the utility is going to raise that rate by about 4.5% a year. Even though I think that's egregiously low, we'll just keep it conservative and say 4.5% a year. Now, the payment on their loan is going to be about $200. The length of the loan is going to be about 25 years. So here's what we tell the person buying solar. You've got a $40,000 loan on your system. You're going to get a 30% tax credit or $12,000. That is not a rebate. It is a non-refundable tax credit, and it's based on how much money you make and how much you pay in taxes. So you will get the $12,000, but it may take 2 or 3 years. But it doesn't matter because it's money that the government's just giving you in the form of tax reduction. So if I'm self-employed and work for somebody else, that's $12,000 that my business has. We've set it aside to pay taxes, and now I don't have to, and now I get to keep it in my business, and I get to use it for marketing and advertising or more equipment or a company retreat or whatever I want, and that's super cool. If I'm not a business owner, if I'm a W-2 employee, well, I don't pay any taxes. The company just withholds the taxes for me, and that's $40,000 of income that they've withheld the taxes on. So I get $12,000 refunded back to me. So this is extremely attractive to an individual. Anybody who pays taxes, this is very attractive. Now, the next thing that we do here is many, many years ago, our company did the first cost segregation study that I know of that went through and really figured out how residential solar works. Not just going into Pro Series software like a normal accountant and seeing a little chapter heading that says, oh, there's a tax credit. We really learned how solar works, and we've learned that there is interconnection to a utility in almost every case. When you're interconnected to the utility, there's something called a net meter or a bidirectional meter that measures not only the power that the homeowner consumes, but also the power that the equipment owner exports out to the utility. And the reason it measures the power that's being exported to the utility is because you're selling the utility electricity. And it's extremely important to understand that. That is absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. Why did Nikolai Tesla absolutely win the arms race when it came to electricity in the first place? Because alternating current worked a lot better than direct current in the ability to measure it on and mass distribute it, meaning sell it. The key to everything in electricity, especially as expensive as electricity is now and as important as it is to our society, is the ability to sell it. And since you have the ability to sell it to a utility, that means that you have some additional tax incentives. The first one is a really important one, and that is you have the ability to write off the interest on the loan. Why is this important? Well, look at a truth in lending disclosure. I know that when you guys do a loan, if you look at the truth in lending disclosure over the 30-year period of the loan or the 25-year period of the loan, you realize that the number's way, way bigger. That's because of interest. That's how loans work. And that interest amortizes just like a mortgage. And all amortizes means is it gets charged up front. So now, all of a sudden, this $200 a month payment is different. Your loan payment is different than the utility bill for two reasons. One, your utility bill is very prone to inflation. I don't know if you're aware of this, but digging up coal and burning it is not getting cheaper, especially when you're running it down 100-year-old power lines. Damming rivers has become almost impossible. Nuclear power plants take a decade. So these are all very exposed to inflation. And in a country where our national debt's growing by about $1 trillion every 4 months, that's a problem. So this is extremely exposed to inflation, where this is not exposed to inflation at all. The payment is fixed. But not only is the payment fixed and not ever going to go up, it's also tax deductible, just like your mortgage. That makes a big difference. So would you rather pay $200 a month to the utility or $200 a month to Dividend or GoodLeap or Enfin? Well, one's tax deductible and the other one isn't. So I don't need a degree in finance to understand that one. That makes a big difference. If you don't understand that, hey, even if this money is a little bit more, even if the payment's a little bit more than the utility right now, that's hedged against inflation. It's not ever going to go up. My cost of electricity is never going to go up, and the payment is now tax deductible, just like a mortgage. You don't have to be you're dumb as hell if you don't buy solar off just that alone. But that's not even the reason you buy solar. Those are nice benefits. Going green is a nice benefit. Cheap electricity is a nice benefit. Fixing your electric costs so they never go up is a nice benefit. Being able to write off your payment is a nice benefit, but that's not why you go solar. The reason that you go solar is real simple. It's because it's a tax shelter, and we haven't even talked about that yet. So let's talk about the tax shelter. Well, one, I get a $12,000 tax credit. But more important, this is extremely important to understand, guys. If I have equipment that's being used in an income producing activity, I have the ability to depreciate, or all that means is write off the equipment. And this is big, and I'll explain in a minute why it's so big. But just for solar today, let's talk about that. Well, how much do I get to depreciate? Well, our calculator will do this for you, and you guys should all have access. But the way it works is I take the $40,000 cost. Now I'm getting 12,000 of that back, so I have to subtract it out. But for whatever reason, it's kind of cool. The IRS doesn't make us subtract out the whole 12,000. They only make us subtract out half. So that leaves us with $34,000. But the reason I have this is for the exact reason when I first saw your chart that showed the number of deals and the number of kilowatts, I instantly realized, the way Alan instantly realized, that that number is not right. Because you guys are busy doing sales and busy doing other things, so your charts aren't going to be right, but mine will be right. So all you have to do is plug these numbers in, and the math will be done for you, which I've found is a useful thing with salespeople. So the amount that you get to depreciate and write off is going to be $34,000. Well, how much is this worth? Well, tax deductions are not dollar for dollar. Oh, it depends on what state you're in. It depends on how much money you make. It depends on how much income you have. And so that gets really complicated. But the good news is, again, our calculator, you don't need to have a CPA longhand math this for you. You don't have to learn the math. The calculator will already do the math. All you have to do is go in and figure out how much the system costs, what state they live in, and how much money they make. That's it. You asked those questions already anyway, so you just plug them into this calculator. So on this particular deal, on a normal middle-class American living in Minnesota or Kentucky or any of those 5% states, Dad was making $70,000 a year. Mom was making $60,000 a year, so we plugged it in. So we've got a $40,000 system with a $12,000 tax credit and a $34,000 depreciation tax deduction. Well, how much are these worth? Well, the $12,000 tax credit is a dollar for dollar credit. That means you get $1 for every dollar in tax credit. So that means you're getting $12,000. The tax deductions are not dollar for dollar. They are whatever tax bracket you're in. So in this case, if they're in the 27% tax bracket, they are 27 cents on the dollar. So how much is a $34,000 tax deduction worth? A $34,000 deduction at the 27% tax bracket is worth $9,180. So for this particular middle-class American home, their total incentives are worth $21,180, which means their total cost of purchasing electricity for the next 30 years, assuming this is a 100% offset system, is going to be $18,820. If you don't buy solar right now as an American with these incentives, you are a special type of stupid. Right now, every single one of you should be doing what Corey is doing. And that is, I have been teaching and selling tax strategy since the late 1990s. For the average American homeowner, this is without question, by far, the best tax strategy that I have ever seen in my lifetime. There's no question. So you should all be doing what Corey is doing. And that is, the sun is out, so go make hay. That's a saying. I grew up working on a farm. That was a saying we had on the farm, but that's something that is very, very applicable right now. I don't remember, how many deals did he close on Saturday, Alan?
5.
5. I don't know exactly what your commission structure looks like, but we're going to call that a fat Saturday. But the reality is you could do that every single day. All of you could do that every single day. And let's talk about why. What it comes down to is this $21,180. That's $21,180. If I'm a business owner, that's $21,000 I don't have to pay. But most business owners set that money aside. So I now had $21,000 that I owed the IRS yesterday, but I don't owe them today. So I get to keep $21,180. And I'll tell you right now, as a business owner, if some guy comes to my house and shows me how I can save $21,000 in my taxes, that's going to be a hell of a lot more beneficial than saving $40 a month on my power bill. It's a vastly bigger emotional trigger. Now, if I'm not self-employed, if it's one of my employees, same thing. My employees don't pay taxes. I withhold it and give it to the government for them. The government now has to refund back $21,180, and for your average American household, that's going to be so much better. So I'm going to talk about one last thing, and this is important for you to understand. The big one is, what should the homeowner do with that $21,180? Well, there are two simple answers. One, you're not licensed to sell financial projects, so you probably shouldn't give them any advice. But what you could do is share what other people have done. Because I'll tell you something. The reason that the industry averages, when they send out 100 proposals, all 100 make financial sense. All of them make logical sense. You wouldn't send a proposal if it didn't make financial sense. So why do 25 people say yes and 75 say no? And then out of the 25 who say yes, 30% of them say they want to cancel. Why? Because cheap electricity is not a very big emotional trigger. I've been doing this since 1999, and I've helped people with tax strategy since 1999. I've showed them ways to save tons of money since 1999. And when I show them ways to save a ton of money in their taxes, I always ask them what they want to do with that money. And I let them tell me. And it's always the same thing. I want to pay off my house. I want to fire my boss. I want to start my own business. I want a bunch of money in the stock market. I want a bunch of money in cryptocurrency. I want a bunch of money in real estate. I want to pay for my kids or my grandkids' college. And then there are a handful of others. I hear it over and over and over and over again. But these are basic core competency things. It's the same reason you're all on this call today. It's the same reason for 8 in the morning you're all on this call. It's the reason people go to college. It's the reason people knock on doors. It's the reason people get out of the bed. It's the reason people set goals. It's core competency, American dream shit. That's what we talk about because that's a strong emotional trigger. So we tell people. I had a lady who started a Pilates studio. I had another lady who started her own podcast. I had a guy who started a CrossFit franchise. We had a couple who bought an Airbnb, made a down payment on it anyway. Now they've got 7 of them. And usually by about the third one, the couple are making eye contact saying, wow, that's incredible. Because every couple has that, babe, we need to make some changes. We've got to do something. We got to have goals. I've got a buddy who owns a solar company, but all you have to do is watch his Instagram and know that's not what gets his heart pumping. This guy wants to go to Alaska and kill bears and wolves with a bow and arrow. And if you show this guy how free money's going to show up out of nowhere, he's going to go up to Alaska and kill bears and wolves with a bow and arrow and create a company to do that. Everybody has that thing that gets their heart pumping. So you ask them what it is, and most people are glad to tell you. But if they don't, it's real simple. Warren Buffett says, if you don't know a damn thing about investing, you stick the money in the S&P 500. I read his book and I watched the interview. In his will to his heirs, he leaves 90% of the money in the S&P 500 to his heirs, 10% in Berkshire Hathaway. Why? Well, I'll show you why. Here I have the S&P 500. It's averaged 13% a year over the last 5 years. I just have it set to the 5-year. So what would happen if you took these incentives and instead of giving them back to Mosaic, what if we just stuck that money in the S&P 500? What do we think would happen? Anybody can do it. You can go stick money. You can go open an indexed fund in the S&P 500 in literally 10 minutes. So let's imagine we do it. Takes 5 years to get all of these incentives, we'll say. 5 years to get your tax incentives. So we get most of it year one, and we stick it into the S&P 500. Over the next 5 years, we take all of our tax incentives and stick it in the S&P 500. and we average 13% a year, that leaves us with $35,554. Well, that's cool. Our system's almost paid off. So why not leave it at another year? Well, at the end of 6 years, I now have $40,000 sitting in the S&P 500. Why? Well, I didn't go out and buy real estate. I didn't go out and buy a CrossFit franchise. I don't know how to invest, so I just stuck it in the S&P 500. And that left me with $40,000 after 6 years, and I could pay off my entire system. And this is stuff we go over, guys. But why is that important? Do we tell people to pay off their system? No, we do not tell people to pay off their system. We just show them that maybe giving the money to Mosaic or back to Enfin isn't the best idea. Maybe if we put one of our registered financial advisors on the phone with them and talk to them about what to do with the money, maybe taking that money and giving it to the bank isn't the smartest thing to do. Maybe the way that you get rich isn't buying products from the bank. Maybe the way you get rich is by doing what the bank does. Mosaic wants that money because they want to take it and redeploy it, but we don't want to give it to Mosaic because we want to take it and deploy it ourselves. And so that's what we do. And in 6 years, I have the whole system paid off. So should I pay the system off? No. We didn't get all of this winning by paying systems off. We got it by investing the money. Also, by year 6, something magical has started to happen, and that is the rate of the utilities raising the rate by 4.5% a year. You see, the first year I didn't save anything. I didn't save a thing. But by year number 5, I'm saving $462 a year. Year number 6, I'm saving $591. Year number 7, I'm saving $725. What should I do with that savings? I don't know. How about we stick it in the S&P 500? And so that's what we do. And so for the next 30 years, I just leave my tax savings in the S&P 500 and the money I saved in electricity in the S&P 500, and I see where that takes me. Well, at the end of 30 years, by just simply taking my tax money, my tax incentives, and leaving it in the S&P 500, I have $754,000 sitting in the S&P 500. And because now I don't have to buy the power from the utility anymore, I get free electricity from the sun. All I have to do is make my loan payments. But I take the difference between my loan payment and what my neighbors are paying for electricity. This strategy takes me 15 minutes a year. I take the money that I save, I stick it in the S&P 500. I've got $350,000 sitting in the S&P 500 also because of my electricity savings, which means I have $1.1 million sitting in the S&P 500. Why? Because one day in June of 2025, this kid named Cody came and knocked on my door. He was working his ass off. It was 9 o'clock at night. And he explained to me that over the next 30 years, I was going to spend $146,000 on electricity. Seems like a lot of money, but that's how inflation works. I'm spending $200 a month and they're increasing it at 4.5% a year. So I'm spending $146,000. So Cody explains to me, or was it Corey? Corey? So Corey explains to me that he's going to put solar panels up on my house. They're going to make my house look new and modern and badass. They're black on black. They're wonderful. I now have a very modern home. It's this big, wonderful construction project that's going to cost me absolutely no money. We're just swapping a bill for a bill, so it costs me nothing. And we're going to swap a bill for a bill, and in the process of swapping a bill for a bill, I'm going to save a whole bunch of money on electricity over the next 30 years, and I'm going to save a whole bunch of money in taxes. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take that savings and I'm going to stick it in the S&P 500, and my retirement's going to go up $1 million. You see, that's how tax strategy works. Everybody complains about how the rich get all of these tax benefits, but it's a lie. You have it backwards. You see, you don't wake up one morning wealthy and you hear a ring on the doorbell and you go and you answer the door and there's this big golden box from Amazon.com. Jeff Bezos himself sent it. And the golden box says, tax loopholes. Oh, I'm rich, so I get these now. The tax strategies were there from the beginning. Just some people were smart enough to use them to become rich. And you see, almost everyone in America is short on retirement. Almost everyone in America. I'll ask the people on this call. How many of you right now today are worried about your electricity bill? How many of you right now today are worried about your back taxes? Or the 1099 income that you've made this year and haven't made your quarterlies yet? Oh, shit. Yeah, well, welcome to everyone in America. You have just discovered a hack from going from 25% closes to 75% closes. Adding that one sentence. This works, guys. And people say, well, if I don't pay the bank, well, this number goes up. Yeah. Okay, so your monthly loan payment goes up to $280. Oh, but remember, because I'm selling power to the utility, it's 100% tax deductible. So who cares? It brings it right back down. So my payment doesn't go up any dollars. So what do? Well, I just took out a $40,000 loan. What's my debt service? $200 a month, except for that $200 a month is 100% tax deductible and it wipes out my power bill. So my debt service is zero. There is no debt service. And I drum up $21,000 of investment capital. So because I installed solar panels, my net payment each month doesn't go up one bit, and I have $21,000 of free money to go out and invest with. So start a franchise, invest it into XRP, put it in Bitcoin, put it in the stock market, put it in the S&P 500, make a down payment on real estate, go to the casino and bet on black because it's free money. And that's how you get wealthy. And this is absolutely awesome and why all of these incentives exist. You should be installing 79% of every single person you talk to. So the only number you really need to focus on is how many people do I talk to? And that should be like Corey and a whole bunch every day. I believe the term is self-gen, which I would be doing all day long if somebody wasn't genning for me, especially right now. I don't know how much money Corey made on Saturday, but you guys should all be making that amount of money every single day because this is real easy stuff. So now I want to talk about one last thing, and that is the one big beautiful bill. What does it do to this? Well, if you talk to somebody in solar, the one big beautiful bill is the bill that came along to really F up the party for everybody. So what is the first thing that we all know the one big beautiful bill does? It kills the tax credit. So what does that do to our $1.1 million? It affects it. But let's look at some of the other provisions in the one big beautiful bill. Is the system still going to be $40,000? Yeah, I think so. Are you still going to be in the same tax bracket? Yeah, fundamentally. Is your power bill still going to be $200 a month? Yeah. But what about the utility rate increase? Well, the Department of Energy has already said if we come in and kill the subsidies for wind and solar, expect that to go up 1.5% at a minimum nationwide. They're acknowledging that getting rid of the tax credit is going to drive the cost of energy up. But that's not what's really going to drive the cost of energy up. You see, if you read the bill, there are still subsidies for renewable energy. Nuclear. They're trying to add 20 to 30 nuclear power plants. So why are we trying to build 20 to 30 nuclear reactors? And the first question I'll ask is, do you want one in your backyard? I would prefer no. But why? Why 20 to 30 nuclear reactors? Well, I'll make this real simple. If you take every publicly held company in the world, you have about $125 trillion of market capitalization. For those of you who understand investing, that's just how much every publicly held company in the world's worth. About 67 trillion of that is America. So we're over 50% of the world's market capitalization. We've seen about a 13% return on the S&P 500 a year over the last 5 years. But that's not indicative of the entire stock market. Most of the stock market's held really flat. There are 7 companies that have carried that and where almost all the growth is. Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Alphabet. That's what's carrying this. Those companies all have one thing in common. And I'll tell you, it's not manufacturing. I think it's great Mr. Trump's trying to bring manufacturing back to America, but there's not a 23-year-old kid in America that wants to go get an assembly job in Akron, Ohio. You see, we have one export in America that matters, and we all know it. And it's a little shameful, but we all know what it is. Stupid ass little videos. That's what we export in America. Even when we use something like ByteDance or TikTok, it's all American content creators. I don't care if you go to any English speaking country in the world, you're going to see American television. That's why American television gets so much tax credits. You can go to Baghdad or Kandahar and you're going to see American movies, and you go anywhere on the planet, you are going to see people streaming American platforms. And it's only getting bigger with AI, ChatGPT. That's what's carrying the stock market. And the reason that the American government just invested $500 billion into big data is because that is what's carrying our market. Social media, big data, Amazon, which is big data. Big data is carrying it all to the point that we're going to build 20 nuclear reactors, which means we're going to have really cheap electricity in about 10 years. But what's going to happen in that interim when the nuclear power plants haven't been built and they can't get permitting and they can't get licensing because the folks in Akron, Ohio maybe don't want one in their backyard? Meanwhile, the demand for electricity is going through the roof. You see, AI is scary. Your grandparents are right to be scared of it, but it's not Cyberdyne or whatever the hell that it's called. The Terminator's not coming. That's not what we need to be worried about. What's scary about artificial intelligence right now, as it stands, artificial intelligence doesn't have arms. It doesn't have the ability to, it doesn't have access to our nuclear codes. It doesn't have any of those things, and we're years away from it. But what it is doing is it's gobbling up all of the electricity. And what's going to happen, I can tell you right now, is that 4.5% is going to go up to more like 6.5%, unless you're in a coastal area. And then it's going to go up to like 9 or 10 or 11. And that is absolutely going to happen. It's already proposed in the bill. The Department of Energy's already admitted it. So what's going to happen to loan payments? Well, that's the next thing to look at. I think Mr. Trump will stop at nothing to bring interest rates down. He crashed the stock market to put pressure on Jerome Powell to bring interest rates down. If you will crash your own stock market, interest rates are going to come down. There's absolutely no question on this. Now, when we look at yield curves, are they going to come down tremendously? Probably not. But they are going to come down. They have to. We have tons of housing inventory right now and people aren't buying homes. Why? Because interest rates are too high. Nobody wants to give up their 3% loan. So interest rates will come down and that will bring payments down. And even if it's only by 10%, we'll just look at what that does. And then the last thing, the most important thing, the rate of return. What is the number one overarching theme of this bill? Is to stimulate our economy and get out of debt. That's it. We have a catastrophic amount of debt in our country, and it's going up by trillions a year. We are in an absolute debt crisis. Republicans and Democrats fundamentally disagree on how to get rid of debt. Democrats say the way that you get rid of debt is, number one, you cut spending on things like the military, but you increase spending on social service programs. And then you redistribute and you take money from the wealthy and you give it to people who are not wealthy. Historically, this has not worked very well. So Republicans say the way that you eliminate debt is you stimulate the economy, you print a bunch of money, but rather than sending that out as stimulus checks to broke people, the central bank, which is the Federal Reserve, loans it to the central government, which is the government. And then the government goes out and they invest into businesses. They hire people, they build roads, schools, hospitals, build projects. And obviously that's what this bill is talking about doing. So how do they stimulate the economy? Well, there are a number of ways. You've probably heard about it. They're not going to tax overtime. They're not going to tax tips. QBID for small business owners is going to increase. But there's one big granddaddy in here. And that is, the big granddaddy is they're bringing back bonus depreciation. That's Trump's legacy. Bonus depreciation. That's the ability to depreciate and write off an asset in a single year. And I'll tell you right now, I don't know if you guys follow tax influencers. I do. It's almost all I follow tax influencers and jujitsu influencers, but that's it. So every tax influencer is saying one thing right now. If you are a small business owner if you are an investor and if you're a real estate investor, you need to invest into equipment and materials that qualify for bonus depreciation because you're stupid if you don't. Why is Elon criticizing the one big beautiful bill? It spends too much money. And that's what's scary because saving solar spends too much money. The bill is being criticized by hardline Republicans for still spending too much money. But what is the Trump administration saying? They're saying what we're going to do is going to stimulate the economy. Well, will it work? Well, do we have a case study? We do. In 2017, Trump brought back temporarily bonus depreciation. Anybody have any idea what happened to the S&P 500 that year? The numbers weren't 13%, the numbers were 22%. It worked. People went out and invested. I've had phone calls with people on this call who've talked to me about how to use depreciation to get rid of their tax liability. So that's the whole idea, is bring back bonus depreciation. So is it going to take that number to 22? I don't think so. But the idea is understand the sentiment of the bill, understand the purpose of the bill. So what happens if this number goes up even just just 2 points from 13 to 15? What happens? What happens in that scenario? Well, we now have $40,000. We've got our $34,000 of depreciation, which now I'm going to have to adjust this because I'm backing out the credit. So now we have $40,000 of depreciation, which means we have $10,787 in incentives. Now, could we do the same thing that we've always done before? Could we take that $10,787 and put it towards the loan to have cheap electricity? Sure, we could. That would be a reasonable enough strategy, and that's what some of your competitors will be doing. But that's not what we're going to tell people to do. What we're going to tell people to do is take that $787,000 and invest it. Why? Because now you have much greater savings because the cost of electricity, because of this bill, is going to go up. You can't kill renewable energy credits and have cheap electricity while demand increases. It's not possible. Fiscally, it won't work. But you also can't massively incentivize every business owner and every single person in America to invest into equipment and materials. Bonus depreciation is the giant flashing red light saying go out and buy equipment that's used in a business. That's what it is. That's the whole idea. And if you think the IRS is going to challenge this, you're crazy. Incidentally, we've already been challenged by the IRS and we won, and that was with the Biden administration, who's anti-business, anti-depreciation. We're not worried about this with the Trump administration because we already have precedents. So if there's flashing a great big bright light saying, hey, invest into equipment, we invest into equipment and we see what happens. We take all of our tax savings and we stick it in the S&P 500. We take the money that we save in electricity and we stick it in the S&P 500. And at the end of 30 years, I don't have 1.1 million. I have 1.4 million. Because I understand the bill in its entirety. I don't look at one piece of the bill and say, hey, I don't like this and scream about it. Sure, you can write your congressman. Yeah, you can sell a shitload of this from now until the end of the year. But let me tell you what's going to happen. Solar reps and solar companies are going to die like flies when this passes. But solar's not going anywhere because it's just like I said. They're not putting solar panels in sub-Saharan South Africa, and they're not putting solar panels in rural Vietnam because of a subsidy, because of a government credit, or because of some sort of loan program. They're doing it because it works. It's more efficient than nuclear today. It's more efficient than gas today. It's as efficient as coal today. If it wasn't as efficient as coal today, you couldn't go and knock on a person's door, put it on their house, let a bank take a 30% dealer fee, and then let a commission make a gigantic commission, the company make profit, if the technology wasn't awesome and didn't work. The technology is awesome and it does work. You do not need a tax credit to sell solar. To sell solar, you need two things. One, the ability to beat the utility. Two, the ability to beat your competitor. And this tax strategy is going to allow you to beat both like you're Alan Bolin on a jiu-jitsu mat. That's the truth. So I want to simplify this. I want to come back to today. As of today, you have both. You have a 30% tax credit. So when you're showing this to a customer, you can show them, hey, I've got a $47,000 system. You're getting a $14,000 tax credit. Well, let's take it back down to 40. So if you've got a $40,000 system, you get a $12,000 tax credit. You also get $34,000 of depreciation. All I have to know is how much does the system cost, what state does the customer live in, and how much money do they make and plug it in. And our calculator will spit this out. A $12,000 credit, $9,100 of depreciation gives me $21,000 of incentives, which means my total cost is $18,000. That makes this really, really, really easy to sell, and nobody wants to cancel it. Because what we're doing is we're saying this $40,000 is no longer $40,000 of debt. It's a $40,000 tax shelter, and people don't cancel tax shelters. Ever. Ever. So what's important is that you get us on the phone as soon as possible. We can do that at point of install. We can even do it at point of site survey. So there are two things that I want you to take away from this call. Number one, start using this. Use it now. Then